Bible is God's word, and it is full of his promises.
God promised Noah he would never again send rain to flood the entire earth.
And with God, a promise is a promise.
God promised Abraham he would become the father of a great nation, God's people.
And with God, a promise is a promise.
God promised his people they would live in a great land, the Promised Land.
And even though it sometimes seemed like that promise might never happen, with God, a promise is a promise.
He led his people out of slavery in Egypt to the land he had promised them. God spoke to his people through prophets. He promised to send us his son, Jesus.
And with God, a promise is a promise.
Many years before Jesus was born, the prophet Jeremiah said God's son would come from King David's family. The prophet Micah said God's son would be born in Bethlehem.
And with God, a promise is a promise.
The prophet Isaiah said that he would be called Emmanuel, and his kingdom would last forever. God gave many promises about the birth of his son, and many years later, Mary gave birth to Jesus in Bethlehem, the city of David, and they called him Emmanuel, which means God with us.
It all happened just as God said, because with God, a promise is a promise.
When Jesus was only 8 days old, Mary and Joseph took him to the temple to dedicate him to God. There they met a man named Simeon and a woman named Anna. When Simeon and Anna saw Jesus, they celebrated. That's because God had promised they would live to see God's son before they died.
Simeon and Anna looked at Jesus and knew God's promises to them were true. Because with God, a promise is a promise.